Okay, welcome to this, what number meeting is this? Oh,
The 128 crew is here.
welcome to this meeting of the Milton Planning Board. What number is it, Emily?
We don't know.
We don't know. We've had so many meetings that
Well, I sent Alex the question today.
we've lost track of what number it is. But in any event,
Yeah, we do.
I'm Alex Whiteside, the chairman. Why doesn't everyone else at the table introduce themselves?
I'm Ed Duffy, member.
Brian Furs, member.
I thought you were going next.
Fine. Bill Clark, Planning Director.
Emily Martin, admin to the planning department.
Emily Ennis, member.
Okay, we have 3 sets of minutes to approve. Do people have them?
Do?
Yes.
They all look good to me.
I had no changes.
I have no changes.
No changes.
All right, so why don't you, Emily, move to approve them?
I move to approve all 3 sets of minutes as written.
Why don't you say which ones they are?
I will as soon as I pull them out. October 9th, October 21st, and September 25th.
All right,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
The minutes are approved. Now, it seems to me we should meet at the end of December, on December 30th, which is a Tuesday. Just because the warrant is going to be closing, and who knows what might come up.
Yep, I can meet them.
All right, and then our regular meeting in January would be
January 8th.
January 8th, and presumably, if we decide that the Thayer Nursery application is adequately complete, that would be the first hearing session.
January 8th, is that firm?
Yes.
January
That's
8th
your-
is firm. December 30th, I think, is firm too, because everyone here sort of nodded.
Should be able to make it.
All right. Citizens speak. What citizens who want to be heard by the planning board on a matter of interest to the board or a matter of interest to the citizens are welcome to say a few words. Any citizens want to speak? All right. Seeing none, we will go on to the agenda. And the first item is zoning articles for the May 2015 town meeting. And as people recall, the October town meeting was designed as a place for zoning, and we loaded it up pretty well last October. And we haven't, I don't think the planning board has any particular articles to present in the spring, and town meeting may be relieved of that. However, Marion McKettrick and Ned Corcoran have come up with a piece of zoning called non-conforming planned unit development. And did people receive the 3-page draft? And I said that they can make a presentation on it if they like. I mean, presumably, I guess they would, if they had their druthers, would like the planning board to present this rather than do it as a citizen's petition. But let's see what they have to say.
Jumping right into the fire, huh?
That's the way the agenda was scheduled. Bill likes to get things moving fast.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to do this, Ned Corcoran and Marion McKettrick. We've worked on, actually, had a more recent version, but this is a good placeholder. And I did a little PowerPoint that I thought would help sort of frame the purpose. There are half a dozen to a dozen, maybe, of properties in town that are, sort of have non-conforming uses that in many cases have deteriorated, or may appear to have deteriorated over time, and are on either undersized lots, dense, tight areas that are difficult both to reinvest in the business and make it difficult, I think, for abutting property owners as well to invest in their property. So, can I point at that? What's wrong? So, as a purpose, it's really to try and find a way to establish a general bylaw provision that will encourage reinvestment and quality redevelopment on lots which contain these pre-existing uses. I think it's one thing to think about a specific bylaw approach to a particular property if we're talking about a large piece of property where there's a significant development, where there's significant investment associated with it, and I know that there's a condominium subcommittee and there's debate on whether and how that should be done. I think small properties don't lend themselves to that approach because the cost and the time associated with that type of a redevelopment plan can be prohibitive if there isn't a basic template that a developer could follow or a property owner could follow. So anyway, yeah, next. So I've shown 4. There are some others out there. The first sort of is what you might call the McKean Oil property. It's the 485, 487 Blue Hills Parkway. It is roughly opposite the bottom of Guile Road, which is at the road that extends down through the high school. It was formerly the Blue Hill Ice Company. There's an old ice business on the property. It abuts on 2 sides, one side by Blue Hills Parkway, on the right north side, and the rear by town-owned conservation land. It's the Pope's Pond area. Pope's Pond is directly behind it, and in fact, a portion of the property, the rear of the property, is within the 100-foot setback from the wetland area. There is on the southerly side, there are several residential properties. And on the property currently, there are 3 large buildings. One facing has 3 units in it, apartments. There is a 4th apartment in the big barn structure. There is the southerly end of that is a sort of a barn, is a dwelling. And there's the barn structure, and then there to the rear left is the old ice house, which also has a dwelling unit in it. And the owner is desiring to redevelop it in a way that could sort of reinvigorate it. All of the buildings are historic in terms of the town's bylaw, and to encourage some reinvestment, I think it would be helpful to have some new zoning.
What's the owner's name? That
McKean,
they know.
Patrick McKean,
Okay, I didn't
McKean
know.
family.
My neighbor. Yeah. Thank you.
And they use it for part of the McKean Oil business. They store equipment, maintain equipment on the site. They don't receive and deliver oil, but they do still operate, some office space and equipment. So Cheryl Togias has been retained as an architect to look at a potential reuse plan, and she and I are working with them on that. Next, Bill. The next 2 show so frontal. You see the big 3-family in the front on the left. There is a large lawn, really nicely manicured with a mature stand of trees on the front right that you would want, I think, to preserve as part of a redevelopment plan. property under current zoning is in Residence B. It could be subdivided into 4 lots. It's a little less than 2 full acres. We think it could do a 4-lot subdivision, or some sort of a condominium conversion, although the town's bylaw with respect to condominium conversion doesn't really get at this. So some sort of a bylaw approach that would allow a reinvestment in the property to take advantage of the historic nature of the structures, preserve that open space, clean up the property as it exists within the setback from the pine tree, from the Pope's Pond, all of would be beneficial, I think, and it's something that the town would benefit from. Next. And that's just another look into the property from Blue Hills Parkway. Next. The next, and it's tight to see, but is the Tedeschi food shop on Houston Avenue. So, they don't have
It's not strong enough.
yeah.
That's why it's not.
But in the middle, and I'll drop down into some street-level views, Tedeschi Food Shop, it's part of a series of properties in that Houston Avenue, Thatcher Plain area that are all part of an old 1880 subdivision. Small lots. The Tedeschi's takes up about 90% of its lot. I think the side yard setbacks on each side are maybe a foot or 2 feet. The rear yard is about a foot or 2 feet. And there is a sidewalk in the front that you can step onto and walk into the building. There are older homes next door immediately to the right. Is a gentleman named McMahon, who I am representing, who simply is not able to reinvest and redevelop his dwelling. It's difficult for him to think about doing something with this commercial use next door. If a bylaw were in place, it's possible to think that those 2 lots could be assembled, that a newer, more modern Tedeschi's type of market could be developed, that parking would become available on the site as opposed to on the street, and that you could create a neighborhood market presence that would sort of replicate what was there originally. When Milton was built out years ago, neighborhoods had markets because we didn't drive, and in fact that was historically been a market location. And so if you drop down, Bill, you can see how close the neighbor on the left and that tree staying on the right is my client's property. There's a narrow driveway opening next. You can see, again, sort of how that's the front. That is the only area of the lot that's really uncovered by the building. Next. That's just moving over. That's the McMahon house. The driveway, it's a narrow driveway, cars, and there's very little sort of real on-street parking. Cars park, often blocking his driveway for short periods of time, but it's a nuisance. It's difficult for him to get in and get out. And so it is another one of those sites where Tedeschi's owns its lot. It's probably happy. It may be happy, it may like to reinvest, and we'll be reaching out to them to see if they'd like to do that, if there were a possibility of a bylaw change. But I think they have no incentive to do anything other than to keep the inside of the store clean, to monitor traffic as best they can, but they're going to stay there in its present condition for the foreseeable future. Next is sort of the corner, just calling it for the sake of this slide, Knights of Columbus corner. It's at the corner of Brook and Blue Hills Parkway. There are several non-conforming uses on several lots. It's a tight corner. You have the old Knights of Columbus building, you have the Milton Food Mart and the auto service shop on a combination of lots. I did represent a developer who sought a variance to redevelop the Knights of Columbus property and was denied. And so a rezoning would have to consider why the denial, what should be done, but a rezoning of that area that might encourage a complete reinvestment, I think is something that would benefit the area, would benefit the town. Go next, Bill. That's sort of looking across the intersection. You can see that the food mart on the left, the white facade, and the old gas station on the right. Next. It's now a frontal with the food mart and the gas, the old filling station. And then if you go again, you can look in past the food mart to the single-family dwelling that's on the property of the KFC building, and then the KFC building itself. And then one more comes around the corner, and this is the Laurel Road property that abuts on the easterly side of the Knights of Columbus property. Unfortunately, despite fairly significant efforts, my client was unable to get access to this property, which might have made the redevelopment more acceptable. But nothing good, I don't think, is going to happen to any of those properties unless there's some sort of zoning that's going to recognize the need for reinvestment and create some sort of vehicle to get there.
The gas station in business now?
Yeah, it's not a gas station, it is a vehicle maintenance and repair shop, and it operates there now.
Thank you.
There are two different uses on one lot, owned by the O'Neill family. Next. And then the last is, so this is the corner of Randolph and Reedsdale, where there's the other Tedeschi and what's currently the O'Neill Success Real Estate. That it contained a former gas station. There may or may not be some lingering issues with respect to gas tanks from the gas station in the ground. I think there's an activity and use limitation on the property, which is an impediment to reinvestment.
All the tanks are out.
Tanks are out, but
There is an AUL on the property.
so, and across the street, I know Marion has represented the developer who's put in the hospice. But it's a property that may or may not seek significant reinvestment unless there's some vehicle that can encourage that. So next, just quickly show the building with the large parking lot off to the right, and then the next view is just looking back sort of across the parking lot. And so those are four properties that I think will have a difficult time sort of reinvesting in themselves. And it strikes me that whether it's this zoning vehicle or something like it, Mary and I have worked on something that's a little more recent, and so would share that for next discussion. But something that would encourage reinvestment, that may think about allowing some amount of density of residential in conjunction with the redevelopment of the business use, would provide, would spur some of that. The model that I used for this is the Central Avenue Business Plan Unit Development Overlay Zone. We started with, you can see on this, they've got a base number of units of 1,000 square feet. That really came out of that. I'm not sure, we don't think that that number's appropriate. Our more recent drafts have sort of break it down sort of by residence zone, and we think that maybe one lot, one unit per 2,000 square feet in a residence C would be more appropriate. 1 per 7,500 square feet in a residence B, and maybe 1 per 10,000 or 12,000, 15,000 square feet or something in a residence C. It would be the densities would step based on the type of the residence area that you were located in. And maybe it ought not to apply to a residence A zone in any event, but there are, you can think of a couple of, there are a couple of locations, maybe the Salamondo lot on Blue Hill on Route 138, behind Canton Avenue might be a candidate. And so, if that were a candidate, what would the right density of housing if you're going to put a mix of use in there? But the thought is that these you know, we haven't adjusted any of our zoning other than to create, we've done it in the business zones, at least with respect to the planned unit developments. We've done it with large residential tracts of land. We really haven't done much else in town. And and I know I've pounded this stump for a while now. Large swaths of this town were developed before zoning. Zoning was enacted presumably recognizing that a lot of the town is non-conforming. But I'm not sure that at the time that was enacted, anyone foresaw that there would sort of be a gradual diminution of value of the properties that were subject to the pre-existing non-conforming. That really all they can do is kind of hold on to what they have. There's no ability to sort of expand. There's no incentive to expand. And so what I think would happen is that those properties continue to diminish. As one tenancy ends, the next one comes in. There's no incentive for the new tenant to reinvest the way they might do if it were a new and reinvigorated use. And so you see, I think what has happened at the Milton Food Mart. You know, that's just allowed to be what it is. Tedeschi is what it is. And Tedeschi in other places, look at Curtis Square on Adams Street in East Milton, just over the line from where Ed is. I mean, that is an attractive new use. If that model were available to be placed, obviously with neighbor input and addressing and identifying concerns, I think that type of a use could become a real benefit to a neighborhood in this community and would enhance rather than see diminution of values around it. Needs to be done with sensitivity, needs to be completely thought out, but I think it's the time to start to do that. And I'd like to encourage the board to adopt a recommendation for this town meeting in the spring around something like this. If not, I'm prepared to get 10 signatures and put it on as a citizen's petition for the sake of having public hearings this winter, for the sake of having a discussion at town meeting. And if it's not ready to be adopted, maybe it gets referred back for study and it comes back in the fall. But I think to simply do nothing, you know, it'll be 2 years before we start to have that dialogue again, and I think that would be, it would be a disservice to the town to do that. So with that, I'll stop and Marion can add her 2 cents, and then we can take whatever questions you have.
Well, we're going to suspend after you make your statement and do our hearing for the plate, and we're going to pick this up at the end of the meeting again.
Okay, well, just for now, what I'd add is the reason I have some interest in this is because I live near some of these sites, and I have for almost 40 years. Some of them were doing very well when I first moved here, but they're not doing so well now. And I know Mr. McMahon, and he does indeed have a difficult problem. He has a very odd-looking, odd-shaped house. It's on 9,000 square feet. It's next to a Tedeschi's. It's not worth it to invest in the house, and he can't do anything else but a house on that lot because it's not big enough. And he's next to Tedeschi's. So the natural thought is there some way these two lots could work together better than they do now? So my view is the impetus for this is that we have pre-existing non-conforming business uses. Those sites exist. The question is, if you were going to try to encourage development somehow, or improve, I wouldn't say development, improvement of these sites, do you need to allow any expansion or change in the business use, or can you look at adding to the business use and the ability to do residential use, but do it in a different way than you can in these residence districts, so a little bit more dense, because that provides the money, basically, to invest. I mean, it gives enough of an incentive, so maybe a landowner will want to invest, whether it's with the business or separately, but in conjunction, they'd have to do a plan. So that's what spurs it for me. The problem is that living in one of these neighborhoods near these businesses, you know, what are you going to change it to? How much would it be able to expand? Would you allow a change in the business use, or would you just say that these are sites that have a pre-existing non-conforming business use, and that allows you to take advantage of some kind of different zoning? That's what you have to think about. And right away, you get questions when you look even at our bylaw draft or this draft, because this draft does allow a change to a different business use, although it excludes certain uses, like car repair business. There are lots of other questions, too, but the bylaw needs to be written, whether it does it properly at this point, so that what it's doing is providing an opportunity to submit a site plan to the planning board for a little different arrangement of a combination of housing and business that looks much better and is a much better site for the neighborhood when it's done. That's the result that you're trying to achieve, in my view. That's why I think it's worth looking at. It's not so easy to do that because, you know, you have to try to get a combination of zoning provisions that are good enough so that there is some kind of financial incentive, but not so big and so different that nobody will support the zoning. And the way to do it, to think about it, is take what we've written, and we'll send you another draft that we've done some changes in. Look at the sites and think about it, and anybody who wants to do that, you know, Milton who's interested should do the same thing. And there are more sites than what we listed, but those are the sites that currently are sort of asking for investment. But there are lots of non-conforming uses, but it's not necessarily true that a proposal could be made that would improve the neighborhood and improve the site for those other uses. So they might not even ever be able to take advantage of this or not be able to take advantage of it now. Nevertheless, it's important to know where the sites are and what they are, because you have to test the zoning by looking at the sites. So that's what I recommend, and I think it's kind of interesting to go around and, you know, take the zoning or take the second version that we send to you and see how it works on the site and whether you think it might actually offer something, because it's going to be difficult to defend unless you can be convinced yourself that it would offer positive, substantial benefit to the neighborhood.
Okay, now, Bill, the plate. We're going to start the public hearing for site plan approval at 10 Bassett Street, plate at Milton Marketplace.
Evening.
Good evening. Introduce yourself. You're being recorded and televised.
Thank you. Michael Modestino, I represent the McNosa 1983 Family Trust, Michael McNosa trustee.
I'm Anthony Maggiore. I'm a builder and contractor that's done quite a bit of work for the Milton Marketplace over the years. And if there are any questions in that regard, that's why I'm here.
I also have Suzanne Lombardi here. She is going to be the proprietor of the plate, and she can answer any questions about the business. She's here with her husband, Andy. I also have Steve DeGiusto here. Steve, if you could stand up. He's the general manager of the Fruit Center, the Milton Marketplace, and he can also answer any questions that you may have. If I may, this is a plan to reconstruct the roof area on the rear of the existing structure at Milton Marketplace. There's an existing dormer out back where the kitchen is, and that dormer is about 20 feet wide. The plan is to replace that dormer with one large dormer or shed at the rear of the building. Each of the new areas to the right and to the left of the existing dormer will be about 15 feet wide, 14 feet, I believe. There'll be no new additional floor space. The whole idea is to create some height space in order to have food preparation in the kitchen, activities being conducted there. There'll be new walls and siding, and the windows will match the existing dormer. It will enhance the architectural look of the rear of the building and make it consistent and uniform. I know that Mr. Clark, in our preparation for tonight, had indicated to me that an individual had come forward and had some concerns about odors coming out of the kitchen for the last proprietor of the business on that second floor. And Ms. Lombardi can address that, but it's my understanding that there was an antiquated ventilation system that was installed in the previous kitchen, and it was not up to code. It was up to code at the time, but no longer up to code. It didn't have an intake valve, and it's my understanding from Ms. Lombardi, and she can explain that there is a intake fan, and it's going to be made completely up to code, and it shouldn't persist as a problem. I think the problem was before that occasionally, because of the lack of intake fan, the cooks would open up a window and some odors would come out. There's also not going to be a fryolator in this kitchen, so that can take care of some of the odors and smells that might come out of the place. And I have the copy of the plans. I believe you each have one, perhaps? Anthony Maggiore is from Maggiore Construction. I think he can explain to you in a little bit more detail about the construction of this new shed area or dormer.
Yeah, basically, it's working area now. We're not expanding any floor space or square footage. The issue is you walk to the outside wall and it's a headroom issue. It goes down to 4 feet is what it boils down to. So what we wanted to do is lift those 2 sections of roof so they could work more comfortably in that area. And as far as the structure is concerned, yes, keeping it in line with the existing dormer we had done, actually I don't know how many years ago, but that was an add-on at one point, that existing dormer. That wasn't in the original structure when we built it. I was involved in the building of the structure 20-some, almost 30 years ago. I actually was the lead contractor on the project and worked with the owner very closely. By adding the dormers, it just keeps a clean line going across the back. It'll update some of the, as you know, over time, siding and things start getting deteriorated a little. It'll clean that whole back wall, give it a nice, clean, fresh look. It'll allow us to bring some of the energy codes up to standard, to today's code as far as insulating and that type of thing. It'll just clean up the back quite a bit and give them a safer working environment at this point. Like I said, it's very difficult for them working in that space that they're working in now.
Thank you.
I don't know that I have anything else to add. Unless you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions, board members? Yes, Ed?
Do I understand correctly, no further seating, just what it is now?
No further seating. In fact, there's going to be less seating.
Okay, you say you're going to have,
Yes.
we're going to address odors? Come on up and address them. Or address whatever you want to address.
Thank you very much. So, yeah, I think, as was said before, we are...
You can introduce yourself
Sure,
again, because
sorry.
I forgot to take down your name.
I'm Suzanne Lombardi. I currently run the plate at 27 Central Avenue, and I'm entering into...
You're also a resident.
I am a resident, 26 Pierce Street. Thank you, Bill, for reminding me of that. We are neighbors, and I'll be able to walk to work, which will be fantastic. So I'm entering into a lease for the space that was held by the Milton Marketplace Cafe. So that restaurant operated for 16 years. We are replacing a lot of the equipment, bringing it up to code, up to compliance. We're working with a professional kitchen consultant on that equipment, and so what's already been spec'd so far is a state-of-the-art ventilation system. So it's going to be a larger unit. As was mentioned before, it'll have an intake fan, which is everything will be up to code, brand new, and is no different than what Abbey Park has recently put into their restaurant. It's also a larger version of what I have that we're running over at 27 Central Ave at the Plate. Again, we are in a real residential neighborhood there, and we've had no complaints or of odors or anything like that, so.
Okay, questions, board members?
What's that?
Is the existing location staying?
It is, so we'll be operating both, yeah.
Is the ventilation system going into where the dormers are being added, expanded?
Nope,
Is
it's
that-
actually going into the same area.
Okay.
We will, in the dormer area that's being talked about, there'll be a upgrade in a larger commercial dishwashing machine, and so it needs some height there, and then for people to operate it, of course, too.
I think the piece that is most important is, right now, the ceiling height in there is 4 feet 9 inches. The new height will be 7 feet 9 inches. So you get 7 feet versus, you're getting a 3-foot head.
Ed?
Any expansion of the business hours?
Yes, we went before the zoning board and got approval to open at 6:30 a.m. on
As opposed to?
Monday through Saturday, as opposed to 8 a.m.
And that hearing was on November 12th.
Were any neighbors objecting to that?
We had
No.
no objections,
No,
yeah.
I think we had one favorable neighbor, and that was it.
Bill, can you just clarify what we're voting on?
Site plan approval, it will
So
be
it's- Okay.
just the site
It's
plan
not- It has
approval.
nothing to do with use.
Nothing to do with use, nothing to do with parking.
And could you, 4 foot 9, does that currently count as square footage, or is it applied to a, half or, does the 4 foot, what's under the 4 foot 9, is that currently square footage, or does it
It's only the
meet a
second
ratio?
floor, so we don't have to worry about it. If it was the third floor, you'd be talking about floors. Here, we're not talking about floors.
Okay, right, okay.
It's still in
So
the
it
square
counts as square
footage.
footage today, it's not changing the square footage? That answers my question, thank you.
You would be thinking of cubic, not square footage.
No, I know, sometimes when you get to the dormer area, they start to create a ratio for you, so it's 4 foot 9, okay.
Right,
Thank you.
which is what I'm talking.
Great, thanks.
All right, who out in the audience has any questions or comments on this application? Seeing no one, Ed?
I would just like to say that I'm there 365 days a year. I walk down and I walk back home, every day of the year, no matter what.
Ed? You enjoy,
I'm just saying.
that the view is okay?
It's a great place.
All right.
You'll be able to get breakfast earlier. You can
That's
start
right.
your morning walks earlier.
It seems to me that this is a good application and we should approve it.
I would move that the board approve site plan approval on this application,
As shown
as shown.
in the application and plan.
Yes.
And we will, and you authorize
Bill to sign
Mr.
it?
Clark
Yes.
to sign a written decision after review by me.
I do add that to the motion, yes.
All right. It's a good motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, do we have further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all right, so we've approved the site plan.
Thank you
And we will
very
give you a written site plan approval, which I think you're going to record.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank
not at
you.
all.
Thanks, Bill.
Now, Marion, why don't you tell us about the situation at 1383 Brush Hill Road?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you. I'm Marion McKettrick, and I am the attorney for the applicant for this A&R lot at 1383 Brush Hill Road, which is on a right-of-way. It doesn't have frontage on the road. So I want to start out tonight by saying that we would like to request a continuance to the 30th of December, and I have a letter here to submit to the board requesting that. The reason for the continuance is we filed our plan on Friday, and lo and behold, the planning board was able to schedule it for tonight. But the neighbors have not had enough time to talk about what's been filed, and, you know, hopefully to come around and decide to support this. There are different views, and there are some details and issues, and we really tried very hard in the last 2 days to communicate quite a bit, but it has not been sufficient. And, you know, I appreciate the prompt scheduling, because the applicant has a very tight time constraint, and she has had a lot of delays trying to get her plans done. She has the plan now. I've actually brought a revised plan to you, because the original plan didn't show the frontage on the street, on the right-of-way. So that's 2 large copies and 7 somewhat smaller copies. But there'll be time to make more copies if you want, and also to make other changes if you do see other problems. So tonight, I've already communicated to neighbors that I'm requesting the continuance, and that I didn't expect that we would have a hearing tonight, a meeting tonight. So what I'm asking the board to do is, I'm certainly happy to answer questions, but since I told the neighbors that we were
Right.
continuing, and I
If
don't want to...
we weren't going to have a discussion, I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
that we should do just what you asked and continue this matter until the 30th.
Thank you.
And thank you, because talking with neighbors is always a good thing to do.
It is, and it's very important. We hope to have a good result then, but, you know, we'll just see how we do, and we'll work on it.
Well, we also do.
Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, now, thank you.
Letter back?
What?
Can I have that letter back?
Yes. All right, so now we've done the, let me just say, I'm going to pass out the resume of our new assistant planner.
I just sent that round to everybody as well.
What?
I just sent the announcement around to everybody again,
Oh, all right.
having heard that we hadn't had a new planner.
Tim Zawinski. I think that you're going to like him.
Right.
How old is he?
When does he start?
We can't ask him how old he is.
How old do you
But
think
he's
he is?
late 20s.
Thank you.
Maybe 30. All right, 30, I'm being told 30, okay.
All right.
When does he start?
He starts soon.
Okay.
He graduated
He's
from
going
college
to
in
the,
2006.
he's at the his name is being brought forth to the Personnel Committee tonight. It'll be approved by the selectmen if it gets approved by the Personnel Board tomorrow night. Therefore, he could start as early as next Monday.
This
Good.
would,
I
this
have a long
would
list
be,
of stuff for him.
this would be good.
Planning
Well,
board,
we have a zoning matter for him to chew on.
can I say something?
Yes.
Planning board didn't have much input here.
Were you,
Had some input.
you were on the
I was
interview
on
team,
the
I assume.
input committee.
Enough said.
Planning was important. We made sure that, that planning would not be left out of the equation. I think that people are going to be pleased.
Good.
And I certainly am pleased. So,
Forward to meeting him.
all right. On the 30th.
On the 30th.
Exactly. Good. Now, we're going to do a completeness review of the Thayer Nursery application for a landscaping, what is the landscaping, I forget, I'll look it up now. Bill didn't have it.
And not,
Landscaping, business use. Landscaping business use. Completeness review of the application. And you all received the application last weekend.
That's,
And hopefully you have access to a copy of the zoning. And we're here to determine whether or not the application is adequately complete so that we can advertise it for a public hearing on January 9th. Right, Bill?
January 8th.
January 8th. Okay. So, what do people think?
I thought it was much better than the original one. I think they put a lot of work into answering many of the concerns that we had expressed at the previous meeting.
I think it was better. I think it could be better still. But it does seem to me that at this point, the input of the public and the input of the board is is basically, it's time for that input.
Yeah, I absolutely think that both we and the public will have additional questions. The question that we have now is this complete enough to meet the requirements of the zoning, knowing that as we go through the public hearing, as we inquire further into what this means, we have the basis to do so in the application. And as I said, it's a much better application than the first one that we received was. So
what we would intend to do would be open, have a hearing on the 8th. And then my feeling is that we would probably continue to do it on a 2-week basis until we have until the hearing is completed. In other words, and we will devote a large segment of each meeting to this. So that is the proposal. We think that it's complete enough to make it a market for a hearing. And so we will prepare an advertisement and
start the process.
We will start the public hearing on the 8th.
January 8th, Al?
January 8th.
The only topic for that evening?
Well, no, we'll probably have a few, well, we're meeting on the 30th, so we're going to try and clear the 8th more or less for,
Right.
I have it, thank you, Al.
yes.
Also on the 8th is the Falcone site plan approval
Okay.
for the new restaurant.
Busy night,
Good to know. Start the year off with a,
long meeting.
right? Nothing wrong with that.
The Falcone site, the zoning board isn't meeting until the 9th. Marion, yes?
You have a chicken and the egg situation with that, because the zoning board really wanted, well, kind of wanted to know what the planning board said about site plan issues, because they were getting a lot of questions about site
And
plan.
we offered to put it on tonight.
But that wasn't possible, because we had, I mean, we would have had to, the next day, had the full site plan application in. And our plan, they already have full plans, but there are certain things that go in a site plan that weren't on the plans for the Board of Appeals.
But we did we did make an effort to have a hearing tonight on the Falcone application, so we could in fact communicate with the ZBA. So,
I mean, they didn't require it, I'm just explaining to you that that's why we said, okay, go ahead, if you can schedule it beforehand, that's fine with us.
maybe we should do it on the 30th.
I was just thinking that,
That's what I'm
actually,
thinking.
that makes
Push it
sense.
to the 30th.
So-
Can you be ready for the 30th?
Because it would
We
be
need 2
nice.
weeks, I believe so, I really need to be in touch with them
Do we have
tomorrow.
enough time
Okay.
to advertise it, Bill?
But is there, yeah,
Check.
Yeah, that's true.
It's Wednesday now. Patriot
Wednesday.
Ledger.
Yeah.
we've been thinking that we might be on the 8th, but it wasn't definite, so, of course.
Well, no, I mean, if the Board of Appeals would
You only
be
need-
interested in our comments, it does seem to me that we need more than one day.
Yeah. So if we do the ledger
You tell me when, when you need it, too.
next week and the week after.
If one of those could go in either the Globe or the Ledger, and then we put the other in the Times.
We've
What
got
date
the
do you need it?
ad all ready to go.
Oh, that's true. Well, you do have to officially, I mean, you're supposed to have the application, the
Right.
plan, the site plan.
And it is, you get your 14 days, you could do it on pretty quickly.
It started on the 30th, and then if there's anything left over, we can
Right,
take
and
care of it on the
also
8th. Yeah.
doing Falcone on the 8th with another hearing on the 9th.
Yeah,
Getting,
It's going to be painful. I mean, we'll do it if you
right.
want, whatever you want.
That way we can devote most of the meeting on the
Right.
8th to the
Exactly,
fair. Yeah,
exactly.
I think that would be good for the first night. So,
Those
So-
two hearings will be
When do you need material?
public comment-wise.
I mean, what's the deadline? It's soon, I guess, but I just want to get, I'm going to have to talk to them tomorrow.
you need the application in when the ad appears, because it'll say the application's on file in the
Okay.
town planning office, so.
Okay.
You know, we would hope that
So the first ad,
it was.
right.
yeah, okay.
Okay.
We were almost going to turn it in before anyway, so I know it must be.
All right, Bill, I think that what you have done,
Thank you.
if you've indicated that we have a go here.
Well, we have to get one into either the Globe or the Ledger, and the other will get to the Times.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we'll
But
just be,
The Ledger's probably cheaper, but I don't know.
it's actually not.
Globe is
But we'll
cheaper?
figure it out, yeah.
Right.
It's easier to,
Really?
we'll figure it out.
So we'll do Falcone
You'd
on
be in
the,
big time. in
I
the-
know, really.
in the Boston Metropolitan newspaper.
It's because they do it online. I will get with Marion and the Falcones tomorrow and figure out
okay,
what that date will be about the application.
okay.
All right. Now, we're going to have I think that we've disposed of that.
Yes.
We're
So
gonna-
Falcone probably on the 30th, and
Right,
Thayer
right,
on the
right,
8th.
Right.
and-
Now, we've disposed of there for the evening.
Yeah,
We're now going to have a preliminary presentation of site plan approval for Steel and Rye.
We're actually not. We're
We're
going to
actually-
postpone that because it's, we have some issues to work out with the building commissioner on need and size of the project.
So we're
If we have to,
postponing it.
we'll come back at the, it was supposed to be before we went to site plan approval. We may not need site plan approval. We're working out
It may not be site plan approval. What about the parking?
there is no change in the parking. There is no change in the seating. That the square footage is what we're working on now. And
if it's under 800?
right.
Okay.
All right, well,
It stays
you,
under 800.
what are they going to do that doesn't need site plan approval?
If it's under 800 square.
What
if
are
it-
they going to do?
Basically, what they're doing is putting in a chimney on the outside of the building that is for a flatbread chimney, so they'd have a wood fire inside.
So
They
the
have a piece-
people up on Milton Hill can get that nice aroma of flatbread baking?
Yes.
Oh, how nice.
Can't beat the marketing.
Oh, because they will be so happy up there. All right. Now, I guess we're going to go back to the, I don't see that there's anything else but a further discussion of what we started off with, which was the zoning proposal.
Right. And so,
And you know, whether or not anyone thinks of anything else that should be on in,
I have some ideas for zoning, but they would all be for October, not May.
Bill?
I have one for May. It's updating the zoning map.
Oh, yeah, we've been needing to do that.
We really do, because we
putting it
found
off.
several mistakes in it.
Well, you say they're mistakes, but they're changes from what was original.
They're really not changes, they're the original plan was done by draftsmen. When the draftsmen did it, they were pretty exact. When we took from the draftsman to AutoCAD, some of those lines actually changed. And there is no, if you look at our map now, it says that it was last approved by town meeting in 1995. And if you look at the map, it says updated from May 2002. But what happened in May 2002 was that we put in the overlay districts, and we never put the overlay districts on the map. But the map says it was updated as of May 2002. All it was is it was created in AutoCAD, and the AutoCAD isn't correct.
So you have to correct the errors in translation from the draftsmanship to the AutoCAD.
Yes.
And then you have to put in the overlay districts.
Yes.
All right.
Now, well, I have a question.
Yeah?
Well, for one thing, I don't know what AutoCAD is.
It's a software system that was used to draw the lines within the map itself.
You don't use ArcGIS?
We will use ArcGIS. We
No.
will
That would
do
be
it by-
preferable, yeah.
We will do it with parcel data,
Yeah.
which, with what we've been doing for the last week, is working on that parcel data,
Okay.
trying to refine that parcel data. Between now and the public hearings, we will really be refining that parcel data so that we get a much more accurate plan. And it's one that we can then use correctly. We'll identify the specific spots. In the submittal for the new plan, we will identify where all of those changes are so that we
The
can
corrections of the errors, yeah.
go back and state where the errors are so that nobody gets, as you're saying,
Yep.
we're changing zoning.
When AutoCAD, when did that plan get prepared?
2002.
And it was just prepared and no one ever approved it? Did town meeting approve the AutoCAD?
No.
So the current map is still, that town meeting has approved, is still the one done by
So
the draftsman?
the
Yeah.
one, so the AutoCAD
But we
is
don't
a,
have that map.
why not?
In 1995, when we don't have, we
Why?
have, because they moved on to 2002, and
Well,
that's what
they
it
But we
threw
should still have
everything
a
I
away?
don't know why. I don't know why. I just.
No
get
one
to
has
do
a
it.
zoning map from 1995?
I
know-
bet I know someone who does.
Oh,
was gonna
we've
say-
got to-
I'm going to guess that the guy whose name this room, the guy whose
I would
this
guess
room
he
is named
probably does,
after
too.
probably has a copy of
He
it.
I think
probably
that,
does, and I've got
Mr.
some
Duffy
old
probably
reports
does,
that,
too.
yeah.
Mr. Duffy actually showed me where that draftsman's plan was, which is what I've been using to go back and truth what's on the other. and
Yeah,
that-
but if we
Good job,
had
Ed.
the
That was
1995
2000.
plan, we would then have the official version to compare it with,
Yep.
Right.
which would be good, since it was in fact adopted by town meeting, and therefore it is the zoning map.
And in fact, once you translate the AutoCAD into ArcGIS, you're going to have to do another check to make sure that there was no inadvertent loss of data when you go from one to the next. Yes.
There are losses and changes.
Yeah.
And we have to identify each of those parcels. We know that, we're doing that. The part of the problem is that that draftsman plan doesn't have a date on it. There is no running date. So we know what it is, but.
Who was
there's no running date.
was Aaron Henry? That was well
2000.
before.
Yeah, that was
It was
before
Bill
Aaron.
Cantor?
I'm not pointing
Are you
fingers at
assigning
anybody. I don't
blame?
know. I don't know.
Good answer.
All right, well, we're going to find the plan, because it is the plan. I mean, it's what we have to start working with, not what you may have found that doesn't have a date on it.
But I think Bill's point, and it's a good one, is that we do need to bring something to town meeting that is correct and updated.
Well, I
So-
don't disagree with
Yeah.
that, but we have to be sure that when we bring it to town meeting, that we've got the,
The correct map, yeah, I would agree.
that we're doing the right thing here. In other words, we don't want to, if AutoCAD is full of errors, we shouldn't be using AutoCAD as our standard. I don't think. So, Brian, you're going to find the 1995
I'm
zoning
happy to
map?
email Mr. Cronin and inquire if he has a copy
all
of that map.
Well, we will We will see.
He's
In any
everywhere.
event, maybe he's watching. John? could-
Yeah, exactly.
John, do you have the? Under other business, just quickly, I gave an extension to our master plan team to get the final plan to us at the end of December. So, I had a few things. that they
December
wanted to-
30th, but we're
December
going to
30th.
probably need
You will need time to review it, yes.
time to
So we
review
would
it.
have a
So
vote
you
probably
can-
sometime
you
in
can-
January or so.
You can have a little time on December 30th to show us the gold-bound copy.
Sounds like a plan.
All right.
Ask if anybody else can get to Tufts at 4:30 tomorrow?
For what?
Oh, that's actually a good point. So the Tufts students, you remember they're looking at East Milton Square and as their project for this semester, and they are having a presentation at 4:30 tomorrow. I unfortunately cannot go because of a work commitment. But Bill, you're planning on going?
Cannot, the selectmen,
No.
the 40B hearing is 5 o'clock tomorrow.
Oh, well, yeah, you would have
So
to be
the
here for
appeal
that.
is based on,
Yeah.
So
Who are
Ed,
they presenting to?
want to go to
They're
Tufts?
presenting to their
Oh, I don't
professor
wanna
and
go.
to
Oh,
Daphne,
okay.
but they would also have
I don't
been
wanna go.
presenting to
You
us.
go?
I can't go, because I have been invited
go.
to join the selectmen
Like,
Also makes a great
Emily's
deal of
going.
sense.
Emily
The
too is
appeal?
going.
to discuss,
Emily Junior.
I have been invited to join the selectmen to discuss the warrant. And apparently, there are some people who had complaints about certain articles in the warrant, some of which were initiated by this board.
that's
So-
not until 7 o'clock, though.
Ah,
I understand that, but I'm not going to go across town to Tufts after seeing what the traffic looked like today, because I might never get back.
Does the
well, I
red line
had,
go to Tufts?
I had
I'll
talked,
actually endorse that.
yeah, really. I've
Does
been
the red
caught in
line
that
go to
traffic jam.
Tufts?
Sorry?
Does the red line go out that far?
Orange line.
No,
the
it's
red
going to
line
be,
does.
the
There's
green
a red
line
line,
is,
yeah.
Red line
But it-
goes to Somerville, and then it's
Right.
only a couple of blocks from the red line station.
isn't the green line extension going to go to Tufts?
In a couple of years.
Not before tomorrow.
$3 billion
I-
and
Yes, the
20
red
more
line
years,
goes.
it'll get up to Tufts.
I did suggest that at some point they come and make a presentation to us here, so we'll see if we can arrange
right,
that.
well, that's good.
So
I'll talk to
that would
Christine
be-
tomorrow.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Sweet talk.
So,
So I did tell the selectmen that if one other member wanted to join me at their meeting to discuss the warrant, that would be fine, but,
I'll be in Tufts, I'll be at Tufts, I can't.
okay. All right, so now let's get back to where we started. This is sort of,
this is a circular meeting.
sort of good.
I love it. Yep.
Ned and Marion, why don't you join us? You've told us about your zoning, you've told us that what you gave us has been revised. You have not given us the revision.
I actually, it didn't get distributed, but it was submitted, and I think I sent a copy to you, Alex.
So we would get a chance to review that before the
I have to
meeting.
keep my copy when we talk, but then you can have
No, I
it.
mean, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. I reviewed it, and
If I could more.
we've got a number of things. We've got the Pepsi plant, which is about 20, 25 acres, which would be a big redevelopment if
Which may
it
or may
were.
not want to apply.
What?
Which, in one consideration, would be whether we wanted to limit it only to businesses in
sizes.
Residence C and Residence B
Yeah.
districts, so that wouldn't account for the large property, which,
Well, all right. So
But
you
it's
don't have you've got the Salamondo Yard, you've got Bench, you've got Matrakas, you've got 2 Tedeschi's, you've got the Blue Hill Fitness store across from the school on Blue Hill Parkway, which used to be a drugstore or something. You have what used to be a drugstore across from the Pierce School.
Yep, it's a medical office.
The
dental
medical
yeah.
offices now. You've got a bunch of other offices. I mean, our governor's counselor seems to have an office in a residential zone.
There's another one on Reedsdale that used to be an office. I don't know if it still is.
Well, I
so-
mean, there was a
There's
dentist, there on, I mean, there are a
Or-
number
yeah,
of doctor's
exactly.
offices in town which would presumably qualify.
Or could qualify, yeah.
Uh,
They're mostly under
You've got-
permit, I believe. They're
Yeah,
not pre-existing,
yeah.
non-conforming.
You've
but-
got the nurseries, you've got the Hendry's plant, you've got, because that has a residential component, and a little bit of the Hendry's plant is in the residential zone.
So then part of the discussion would be how and whether at first and then how to limit.
Well, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
just saying that
If
there
we
are a
wanted
lot
to,
of
yeah.
disparate sites here that something could apply to. And it doesn't necessarily have to apply to
Right.
these sites, but if it doesn't, then the site should be excluded, because we don't want to zone sites that we don't want to zone.
Right, right.
So-
Yeah, or types of sites. I mean, I think the Pepsi plant's a good example. 25 acres is probably something that would
probably don't
would be
wanna-
something that would need to be contemplated under a bigger bigger process. Maybe it's a limiting of the acres,
Right.
of a maximum acreage that this could apply to. Henry certainly, I mean, I would want to see a bylaw contemplate that the use has to have been active within the last 2 years, not non-conforming uses going back for all time that have been abandoned effectively. Hendry's has them in operation for over a decade, so that
Well, and then the other
seemed to be
point is,
disqualified.
yeah, is it a continuing use that we, as a town, might not want to continue, to their point in their original draft of limiting certain auto uses in residential areas? Do we want to do that? And is there anything
And
else?
of course, who is the "we"? Because...
We being the
you-
town as a whole.
Well, I
That-
understand.
yeah.
But you recall when we did the temple,